Yes, yes. As advertised, Duke is here. Grayson Allen, Gary Trent Jr., Travon Duval, Marvin Bagley III, and Wendell Carter Jr. And we will go right to questions. Start right there in the second row. Thank you.
Shea Wildebohr, jayhawkslant.com. Listen, tomorrow I know you guys have a matchup with Kansas with the Final Four at stake. Can you just guys talk about Kansas and what you've seen on film in the short time you guys prepare for them?
Give this one to Gary and Marvin, please.
To answer your question, it's win or go home. They have a high-powered offense. Their guards can shoot the heck out of the ball, and they have big men down low. That's good, and they have big men that can come off the bench and do work as well. So we really got to come out, play hard, play together for 40 minutes, share the basketball, make the extra pass, and we should be successful.
Yeah, to go off of that, they're a great shooting team. I think they're one of the top three-point shooting teams in college right now. So, they got two big men down low that can do a lot of things as well. So, they're a very good team. We're both here for a reason, and it'll be a good one tomorrow night.
This is for Grayson. Eric Olson with the Associated Press. Hey, if you guys do win tomorrow, Coach K will go past John Wooden for most Final Fours in a coaching career. Grayson, I mean, since you've been around for a while, have you reflected much or have some thoughts maybe just on the guy that you're playing for, what he's meant to college basketball, not just now, but just kind of in history?
Yeah, I mean, I have just because I've been through, obviously a lot of big milestones for Coach. 1K in Madison Square Garden, 1K at Duke. And so I understand really how long he's been coaching for, how long he's been great for, that he is one of the greatest coaches of all time, and that, what we're doing is a very small part of his overall legacy. And so, I mean, that adds to you really just trying to learn everything from him. And, I know Coach he won't mention that to us. He will never say anything about something like that. Just because at the end of the day, Coach just wants one win, and he just wants to get his first Elite Eight win with this team, and that's all he's focused on, and that's the mindset we're trying to take.
Danny Klinkskill, Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. For Grayson, I imagine when you came to Duke, you didn't think you'd be playing zone your senior year. Can you talk about that sort of transformation and even slapping hands on the floor while playing zone, and how unusual you think it has been that this program has become a zone program for at least some?
Well, Coach adjusts. That's one of the things that makes him so great, and we found out that zone was the best defense for this team, and found it out about halfway through the year, and so we went with that, and then Coach really fully committed to it and taught us zone, and it became our number one and only defense that we really play. But it's still the intensity and everything of Duke defense is still there. It's obviously not the man defense that you've seen for 20 plus years, but the intensity is still there. And when we play it really well, like we have been over the last couple of weeks, it's the talk and activity and floor slapping, like you said, it all can be there.
Grudgingly, do you think he went to the zone?
It didn't seem like it was very grudgingly. I mean, I know he's obviously a man coach, and so we worked on man a lot and tried to figure it out before we went zone. But once we tried out zone really early on in the year, and it was working just because of our length and athleticism. And once he kind of realized that this team is way better at playing zone, he went with that.
Luke DeCock, Raleigh News and Observer. Grayson, as your career comes to an end one way or another here, what would getting back to a Final Four mean to you, and in terms of how you think of what your legacy will be at Duke?
Um, yeah, I mean, it kind of would bring everything full circle. Starting off with, kind of being spoiled as a freshman and not really having to do much, just being a part of the team and being led to the Final Four and led to a national championship win. And now, coming around to my senior year where I'm the captain of the team and, trying to be a leader of younger guys. And, I don't worry or think much about my Duke legacy. I just really want to win. And, this group has become so close that I know what the Final Four feeling is like. I know what that national championship feeling is like. And so I really want to do that with this group and have these guys experience that too and experience that with them.
Jonathan Alexander with the News and Observer. You all came to the season with a lot of high expectations. #1 recruiting class. So can you talk about what this journey has been like for you all? Whoever wants to answer the question.
Yeah, we'll give it to Dravon and Wendell this time. Thank you.
This journey has been amazing. We've been through a lot of ups and downs as a team and even individually. But, the hard work has paid off, and, we're still working on trying to accomplish a goal of ours.
I think he really hit head on everything. We have a lot of expectations coming into the year. We had a lot of ups and downs. A lot of games, not a lot of games, but games that we lost that we thought we should have won. But I think we're peaking at the right moment, and that's all from the hard work we've been going throughout the year.
I'm Mark Tracy from the New York Times. For Gary and Grayson, you guys took and made most of some pretty crucial free throws down the stretch last night. Towards the end of games, that's what fans mostly see is lots of free throws, the way it all shakes out, and so they tend to think a lot about, well, is this a good free throw shooting team? Do you think in any way free throw shooting percentage is overrated? Obviously, it's like the first thing coaches always talk about, but is there a sense in which we place too much stock in that?
Gary, first, please.
I wouldn't really say overrated because at the end of the game, percentages do play into part of how you perform, your shots you take and stuff like that. But for me, it's just really just being ready and being in the moment. Like I said yesterday in the interviews, shoot free throws after practice, before practice. So I have a high confidence in myself when it comes to that.
I don't think it's overrated, especially towards the end of a game. If you're up a few buckets, if you're not a good free throw shooting team, they can start fouling early and really extend the game and go after you, and it can hurt your team. Hitting big free throws down the stretch is what allows team to keep leads and win games. And obviously through the games, you got to capitalize on the free baskets. The stats don't even come up with how many front ends of one-on-ones are missed, and that's 2 free points that you should have had, and it only shows up as 0 for 1. So I think free throws are very important to the game because it's free money, free points for your team that you should score.
We have 10 minutes left. We have 4 questions up. Go, please.
Zach Brislow, New York Post. For the freshmen, you're facing a team that's gotten to this point before and has lost, and they have all the motivation in the world from those last 2 Elite 8 losses. How do you guys kind of match that intensity and that desperation that they're going to come out with when, this is your first time here? You don't have that, memory of disappointment and dejection that they've gone through.
Marvin, first, please.
They have obviously been here before, like you said. This is the freshman's first time here, but we understand that nothing's gonna be easy for us. Nothing's gonna come easy if we want to get to the Final Four. So we have to really lock in, like we've been doing the past couple games, and just focus on our game plan, the things we need to do to make sure we get a win. And I think that with the preparation coach has been giving us and all the film that we've been watching, we'll be ready to go. And I'm just excited to be a part of a special game like this, and I'm sure the rest of you guys up here are as well.
Go here.
Grayson, Chris Lazarino, the Kansas alumni. This is already the biggest game of the year for both teams, trip to the Final Four on the line. But does it have it be Duke, Kansas, add any juice to this game?
It's going to add juice to the game from y'all's end. I know that there's going to be, if it's possible, there's going to be even bigger atmosphere around this game. Just because it's a battle between two big programs, two great coaches. But for us, and I'm sure for Kansas too, we'd bring the same thing, same intensity, same focus to the game. It doesn't matter who we were playing, just because of what's at stake. It's a regional championship and a trip to the Final Four, and that's huge for your team, let alone a big program.
David Lawrence, Jayhawk Radio for Wendell and Marvin. As you know, Kansas plays with 4 guards around Azubuike. And can you talk about going against Udoka Azubuike and also the fact that there's going to be a guard guarding one of you most of the game?
Wendell first, please.
No, they're a great defensive team. Even though they do play with 4 guards and 1 big, they're going to make it difficult for us to score. We're going to just play off of one another, not force the action. If we're going to just find the best situation on the offensive end, and and score the ball.
To go off of that, they are those guys that you just named. They're very, very great players, and we just got to figure out ways that we can still look for each other down low like we've been doing all year. And I think once we get out there and once we start playing and getting up and down, it'll just come to us naturally, and we'll find each other. And the rest of the team, they'll get in the spots, and we'll all be able to be on the same, on the same mission and just trying to get an easy bucket. So, it's just about just locking in and moving the ball, shifting the defense, and trying to get buckets.
Denny.
For Marvin, he was talking about the urgency for Kansas. Well, in all likelihood, this is your shot to make the Final Four. Do you think about that, the one opportunity, and does that add extra pressure to you?
I think about that a lot, but I wouldn't say it's pressure. We're all in this thing together, so that's one thing I know going into every game is that I'm not the only one experiencing this, and we got a lot of other guys that are experiencing this as well. So that helps a lot, and I think that's bringing us closer as each game comes. But we just got to focus on this game. This is a great team we're going up against, and if we take care of business, we'll be moving on. But as of right now, we got Kansas, and that's all we're worried about.
We have 4 minutes to go. We have 2 questions up. Right here in the second row is first up.
Kate Carlton, South Boston News Record. What challenges does the short prep time in between games present to you guys for tomorrow night?
Trevon first, and Gary, please.
It doesn't really. We don't really have a challenge when it comes to short preparation with this team in particular because we've watched Kansas. We've seen Kansas play against other teams just throughout the year. So I think we have a pretty good feel for how they play and their players. And we watch film. We watch film today, and we're gonna watch some more film later on today and tomorrow. So I think we have really good preparation for the game.
And piggyback on Trayvon, our coaching staff does a terrific job in preparing us and getting us ready for any opponent, any situation that we're going to be in any game. So I just believe in them, and they show us the way. We just follow it.
Zach Brazil, New York Post. Grayson, did they remind you at all of some of the freshmen you played with when you guys won it all 4 years ago? Are you getting any flashbacks when you see what they're doing in this tournament?
They really go after it. They haven't been anxious or over nervous. They've been very confident. They don't feel pressure on them, which is great and how it should be. And they play very free. They've matured a lot over the year, and that was one of the special things about the 3 freshmen on the 2015 team is they were very mature, and especially come tournament time, they didn't play like freshmen. And right now they're getting there and they have matured, and now they play with a lot of experience. I'm not the only one talking out there. These guys are talking, and they're bringing us in for huddles too, and it really helps not only me but helps our team and helps us become more together with what they're doing.
Anything else for the gentleman from Duke? Okay, we are dismissed. Best of luck tomorrow, gentlemen. Coach Krzyzewski is up next. Going out that way.
Thank you. You're quite welcome, Frank.
We're going to have the head coach start off with a statement about tomorrow's matchup, and then we'll go straight to questions. Mike, please.
Yeah, well, we won a hard-fought game last night, and we're going to have another one, tomorrow afternoon. Kansas, for me, is one of the premier programs in the history of our sport, and Bill has done a great job of not only continuing that championship tradition, but maybe enhancing it. And he's done a great job with this team, as he has with all of his teams. And they're a tough team offensively to stop. With the 4 perimeter players that they have, they put a lot of pressure on you as soon as they get a defensive rebound, because 4 guys can bring the ball down the court. And they've always played good defense. They're playing good defense again, and we'll have to play really well. Really well to beat them. But it's an honor to play against them. Certainly, it's an honor to be in the Elite 8 game. And we're healthy, and hopefully we can get a little bit more rest today. We'll have a practice after this, but we won't be doing much contact or anything like that. We'll try to get fresh legs for tomorrow.
Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Can you, Coach, talk about the difference in this particular game? A lot of times you see the game, and at least at the outset, the teams seem tight. The prize is so big afterwards. Can you describe? You've been in a bunch of these, but what's the difference between this game maybe and others in the tournament?
I think there's more of a difference if during the year you haven't made every game a big game. And in the tournament, if you have not made every game a big game. And so this is our next big game. Like we approach the tournament that each game is a championship game. And so that this is the 4th championship game that we'll play. And not to let anything else enter into it. Like getting to the Final Four, well, there was pressure at that in the first game. So, and then we're in so many games during the year, but we approach each game the same. And so they're accustomed, they get the habitual stuff of preparation is there. We're not going to change in our preparation for this game.
That being said, have you noticed at times that teams seem tight, that maybe your team was tight or other teams?
I try not to look at other teams, except the one we're playing against. And so I don't, human nature is a hell of a thing. And so, what I've learned, hopefully well, is that you're always fighting human nature. That's always an opponent. And how you can minimize that opponent throughout the year, when you get to these points, then maybe you won't have to, you won't have a monster to beat at this point.
Down here on the right, Mike.
Mike LaPresti, NCAA.com. Mike, it's accepted that it's a good part of the tournament when you have upsets and Cinderellas. How good is it for the tournament when you have two programs of this stature going against one another?
I think it's great that Duke is involved. And I think, the tournament this year is incredibly interesting and so good for the sport because it shows it shows that people can beat one another, but in certain regions, 1 and 2 end up the right, the way the selection committee thought it might end up. And so I really think that the contrasts in each region are great for the sport at this time. And I'm just glad that our region wasn't the one that had the 9 and 11, or I don't know all the numbers, from the other regions. But it's great when you have two programs of this nature, of this status in the history of our game, play for a Final Four berth. I think it's great for the sport.
Okay, we're on row 4 on the aisle, and then we're on the other aisle next, and then we're down here, Carol, for number 2. Go, please.
Jeff Gravely, WRL TV. Coach, was talking with Coach Capel yesterday, and it was not every player is cut out to play at Duke. And I'm not talking about from a talent level, but from, are you strong enough to handle the scrutiny, all that you have to go through, and even the word hate came up. Is that a part of your evaluation to try to look at a kid and ask yourself, is he strong enough to handle playing at Duke?
Well, I don't know if we look at it that way, but one of the keys in recruiting somebody is character, and talent, academics, basketball talent, academics, and character. Are you coachable? Have you been on teams? Or do you have a good family? If you have a great family structure, have you had any adversity? And you look at all those things. But it's an honor to play at Duke. Whatever this stuff about love and hate, that's like, come on. You're going to be in the spotlight. Are you good? If you're in the spotlight for a long period of time, you are going to have extreme emotions observing you in that spotlight. Some of that emotion is going to be, wow, and some of it is, ugh. And you probably won't have many in between. That's a hell of a lot more interesting life to lead than mediocrity, And so let's go for it. Let's go for it. We're not the only ones who do that, but I think because we're a private school and we're not, the status of the academics and all that lends itself to maybe a little bit more extreme devotion or, the other emotion.
Mitch Sherman, ESPN.com. When was there a moment of realization, if that existed for you, about Bagley's special talent, be it before he got to Durham or during his time?
No, the first time I saw him, we were, I don't know if we were we were with the U.S. team, and he is in Arizona. And Jerry Colangelo, that's where he's from. And he showed me like a video on his phone and said, this kid's an 8th grader. And so he is. And so I knew right then, I said, this kid's going to be really, really good. And obviously never, not knowing that we would eventually have him at Duke. But you could tell right away. He comes from great parents, great grandparents. Joe Caldwell is his grandfather, and mom and dad are really outstanding athletes, and they're really good people. I mean, he's got all the good qualities to become very special.
We are here, 2, 3 on the aisle. Washington Post is 4. Go, please.
Kate Carlton, South Boston News Record. They rank 10th in 3-point shooting in the country. How important will it be to stay active in the zone on the perimeter for 40 minutes tomorrow night?
Well, not only in the zone, but in transition. They get a lot of threes because Bill's teams have always attacked in transition and not necessarily just to throw it into the post or drive. They'll take early threes and good ones. So, we have to be able to cut down the number of good looks they get in transition and in the half court.
Coach, Reed Forgrave with CBSSports.com. I'm curious the difference in how, when you get to this point in the tournament, how you prepare a group like this that is so young and so filled with this big-time NBA talent versus the team from 7 or 8 years ago that won the title, where it was so experienced, and I don't think a player from that team got drafted that year. Do you prepare these teams differently mentally?
Well, you always prepare them, but you prepare them the same way for that team. In other words, I mentioned earlier, how we prepare for a game now is really how we prepared for a game in November. They've just grown. So the amount of information you give them now is retained easier now than then. But how we eat, how we practice, the importance of each game, so that when they get to these points, we're not doing something unusual. With the team you referenced, we in 210, we had three seniors and 2 juniors, and you prepare differently with them because you can give them more. But the actual preparation for the game is similar to what they did for each game prior to that, and to get into the habit of preparation. So it doesn't matter if you're in Pittsburgh or in Charlotte, Omaha or Boston or whatever. Things don't change. You try to stay as close to being the same as you can.
David Lawrence, Jayhawk IMG Radio. Coach, can you talk about KU's guards more in detail, and also Udoka Azubuike and the fact that Bill is going just with one big man and the problems that might pose for both sides?
Yeah, well, his team is very similar to a number of teams we've had, where you have 4 outstanding perimeter guys and then 1 really good big guy. And, in Graham, you have really one of the great leaders, not just players in the country. Look, he's one of the top 5 players in America, and it's not just because he scores, but it's how he leads. When he's on the court, everybody is better. And I think Malik has benefited from playing with him, and he's playing at the highest level. And Micaiah, I saw him when he was a 16-year-old or whatever. He played for Ukraine. He played for Mike Fratello when we were in the World Championships, and so we knew how good he was going to become. And Vic, is that athlete that he benefits. They benefit somewhat from that matchup, the 4 matchup, depending on who it is that Bill puts on the 4. And they play well together. They share the ball. And Azubuike has, been such a man inside for them, and plays with tremendous energy and power. And for those perimeter guys to know that big guy's back there, I think that helps them. I've read their comments after the game yesterday, and they were so reverent to Azubuike, as to the strength that it gives the perimeter. So that's what makes them an outstanding team. They complement one another very, very well, and they've always been very unselfish. His teams are always very unselfish.
We have 7 minutes to go. We have a question here. We have one on the aisle on the right side. We have one in the second row. Go, please.
Yep. Chuck Culpepper from the Washington Post. Coaches, including Bill Self last year, have referred to this as the hardest round and the most painful one at which to exit if you lose. And coaches in all sports have talked about suffering, losing more than enjoying winning sometimes. I wonder if that was true of this round for you in the mere 2 times that you went out, or if the massive 12 times that you didn't go out drown out that.
Well, I think just to explain why I think coaches, excuse me, look at it that, for us in the coaching profession, one of the bridges, the biggest bridge that you can cross is the Final Four bridge. It's no matter how many games you've won, if you haven't gone there, it's an empty feeling. And so when you do get there, there's somewhat of a relief, happiness, but also a relief that you get there. So when you get to this point, it's a huge bridge. And so for me personally, we were able to cross it right away. And so my feeling was, in '86, we got there right away, so I didn't go through the suffering. And so I'm more in tune with the suffering or the happiness of my players, and try, like in '98 when we didn't get it, we lost to Kentucky. And I can remember that locker room. Steve Wojciechowski was my captain, and it was the toughest locker room I've ever been in, as a collegiate coach. And although I've been there before, that was their time. So I think if you've been there before, you kind of relate to what the players are feeling at that time.
Way on the right, Mike. Matt Galloway, Topeka Capital Journal. Coach, how difficult of a decision was it to make the switch to zone, and was it something that you kind of gave pause to at all?
Yeah, no, we give a lot of thought to it, and we give a lot of thought to everything. Doesn't mean our thoughts are always right. But no, we were playing zone all year, and when we decided to go to it, we still do some man-to-man. We haven't done it in a game recently, but you have to, there's got to be one primary defense that you spend most of your time doing, and we made that decision that it would be zone, and it fits our team better. It just fits our team better.
Coach, you have 2 senior guards going at it tomorrow, in Devontae Graham and Grayson Allen. Can you speak to the legacies they will leave on their respective programs? Yeah, well, they've been great for their programs.
I'll let Bill talk about his player. Devontae, he's been, one of the best players in America. Grayson, I'm so proud of the leader he's developed into. So good that he came back for his senior year, and he's become just a much better player and a leader. And the freshmen have benefited greatly from it. They're really a close group, and Grayson being able to handle this the way he has been terrific.
We have 4 minutes to go. We have a question here, 2, 3. We'll try to get to you. Go.
Jeff Goodman, ESPN. Mike, this freshman class was #1. Next year, you've got the #1, 2, and 3 player coming in. A few years ago, another guy kind of ran recruiting. Now you seem to have run it. Why? Why do you think you've been able to switch this?
Yeah, I don't think anybody runs recruiting because there's so many good players. And just because somebody ranks somebody, players are developing all the time. And a lot of times a player that was not a McDonald's All-American or in the top 20, 25, as a sophomore is better than 15 of the kids that were rated before him because he hasn't fully developed or he's gotten an opportunity. You see it all the time. And so, we have always just tried to recruit the best player who fits academically, talent, and character-wise. And it just happens that it's not like we changed to go one and done or whatever. The world changed. You know, we didn't change. The world changed, and we've been able to attract some really good players. But we're not the only program that does that. I mean, no one has cornered the market on huh?
Kentucky.
I don't.
For
You know, we don't.
for players lately that
You know
maybe
what? I
didn't
will
beat.
tell you something that you won't believe. But since I tell the truth all the time, I hope you will believe it. When I recruit a kid, I don't even want to know. I never talk about another school. I never mention another school. In fact, going into a home visit, sometimes I say, "Who's recruiting him?" You know, just you know, I want to make sure I don't do it because I just want to sell my thing. So I don't get into any. The only competition I'm in is tomorrow. You know, is tomorrow. And in recruiting, if we pick the right kid and we do our profile the right way, we should have a great chance of getting them because we have a great school, a great program, and our guys get better. That doesn't mean we're the only ones, you know, but and it's the way it is. And they're okay being coached by an old man, you know, so.
We're going to take these two questions, 1, 2.
Speaking of old men.
Exactly.
All right.
I'm sure your individual feats aren't on your radar screen right now.
They are not. No.
But it is significant when a coach can pass John Wooden in anything. What would crossing that bridge for the 13th time mean to you?
Yeah, just that I'm doing it with this group. And I'll look back at those things. Yeah, I'm not a rearview mirror guy. And I haven't been with USA Basketball and with Duke. And, you know, if you are, and if you're doing it, you cannot let those things enter the room. Otherwise, you're not going to be hungry. Because when you start thinking about, I'm not knocking you, when you start thinking about you can rationalize. And rationalization is one of the things that stops people from continued excellence because they live in the past and then they stop adapting and they stop getting hungry and they stop having that opportunity to do what we're going to be able to what we might be able to do. And so I don't know, that's it's almost like just don't think about it at all. And I don't, but believe me, I do not at all. But I would love to win with these guys and be a part of their emotion if they're able to do it. That'd be cool for 71-year-old guy.
Final question. Thank you.
Coach Mark Tracy from the New York Times. You have in Gary and Wendell, two guys whose dads played professionally. Obviously, you recruit and coach plenty of kids who aren't in that position. But I'm wondering, in recruiting and in coaching, is there anything that tends to distinguish players who are in that position with fathers who played professionally?
No, it can hurt them. You know, it can hurt them because the father might want to continue to coach them while we're coaching them. And that hasn't been the case. They've allowed us to coach their sons. But you know that at least they've grown up in an environment where their fathers have pursued excellence and attained it. And just, I think that's good as long, it's like with any kid. We just want the parents to allow us to coach. You know, give me your son and give us your support and let's see what happens. But it does help, especially in those two cases because they've been so good with us. Yeah.
Okay, Mike, thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much.
They want you to go up there. There's your guy right there. Okay. Thank you. Kansas Jayhawks are with us. Head coach Bill Self, Devontae Graham, Malik Newman, Udoki Azubuki, Zvi Makilik, and LeGerald Vick. The student athletes will be dismissed at 4 o'clock for breakout sessions. Coach Self will stay here as long as there are questions. We're going to have him start off with a statement on tomorrow's game, and then we'll go to questions for everyone on the dais. Bill, please.
Well, we're very proud and excited to be a part of this game tomorrow. You know, we've had an opportunity to play in a few of them, and obviously the last 2 years, and certainly look forward to playing a terrific Duke basketball team. And should be a fun game for a lot of reasons, especially with the history of both ball clubs.
Open up for questions for any one of the gentlemen up here. Let's start right down here in the first row. Thank you.
Shea Wildeboer with JaxLand.com. For Devontae and Zvi, you guys, I think this is your third trip, your last trip. How do you guys go about breaking down the door and getting on to the next step?
Devontae first, please.
We just got to prepare. We had a good practice just now, and we're going to go back and go over scouting report, watch more film, and guys got to come out and play their hearts out and just put it all on the line.
Prepared, you know, get ready for compete. It's going to be a hard game, but, you know, we just got to do our best.
Jeff Goodman, ESPN. So I know Coach called you guys soft quite a bit before the season. Does he still? Who did he pick on the most? You know, when did he stop, if he stopped calling you guys soft?
Malik, please.
He probably just stopped calling us soft not too long ago, but I'm pretty sure he still want to say it every now and then, and he probably picked on me and Udoka the most about being soft. So, what you think about it, big fella?
Yep.
Mitch Sherman, ESPN.com. Bill, a question about the one guy who's not here. And I know you've documented Silvio's progress as the year has gone on from January on up through this, but looking back at it now a couple months in reverse, when do you feel like the light kind of came on for him? And, you know, how do you see him now in comparison to a short time ago? And then for the same thing for one of the guys, maybe Udoka, if you're best positioned to be able to gauge his progress too.
Let's have Doak start first, then Coach.
I think he came during the Big 12 tournament. Like he made a big step, a huge step in the games at the Big 12 tournament, and I think that really stepped his confidence up a lot. And just seeing him and seeing the way he play right now, I think his confidence is on the high. It's on the high rise, and I think he's on the right path.
I agree with Doak. You know, he really hadn't had many opportunities to play, in large part because it's, you know, just trying to fit in, and he's thinking instead of reacting and all that stuff. And we thought probably around February 1 would probably be the time after he'd been here about 4 weeks that, you know, we'd start seeing some progress. And it probably didn't happen quite that quick. And he had a couple of really good regular season games, but when Doak got hurt, he knew that his number was going to be called. And one thing that we found out with Silvio, if he can stay in there extended minutes, he gets a lot better. When he's in there for short spurts, he's not near as effective. But the Big 12 tournament is when he really, I think, when everybody started getting a lot of confidence in him.
Jackson Schneider, KJHK, and this is really for any of the players. The Big 12 now has 3 teams in the Elite Eight, and I just wanted your guys' thoughts on the league as a whole and how it's maybe prepared you guys for this stage.
LeGerald first, and then Devontae, please.
I just feel good just to see other teams from the conference, you know, playing for a national championship. You know, we are Kansas. We prepared. So I don't know what else to say, but that's all I got to say.
The league definitely prepares for, to playing games like this. The conference from top to bottom, any night you could go and lose to a team. So, we played against a whole bunch of different schemes and zones and different matchups, good guards, good bigs. So, I felt like, it put us in a position that we could play in this Elite Eight game.
This is for Devontae. Eric Olson with the Associated Press. Wanted to ask you about Malik. Having him practice with the team last year when he was sitting out as a transfer and what he did there, and then having some struggles here to get going as the regular season went on, kind of up and down. Were you surprised that he had some struggles, given what you knew about him coming into the year?
No, not really, because I feel like everybody, you go through that hump or whatever it is, if it's trying to just learn the system, learn how coach wants you to play, and you got to learn how to pick and choose, when you shoot the ball and things like that, and you got to learn how to play with guys. So he didn't get to play with us last year. He was always on the red team and, playing with the walk-ons a lot. And so he just had to get that chemistry. And but ever since he's been great and playing hard and knocking down shots.
Samir Pandari, Duke Chronicle. This is for Devontae. You've been a part of a number of Kansas teams now, and both the last 2 years have ended up in the Elite Eight. But I'm kind of curious, in your mind, how is this team really different from the ones you played with Josh and Frank a year ago and even before that?
I really don't know how much different we are. We still doing the 4-round-1 big and playing kind of the same. And I think we might have a lot more confidence coming into this tournament than we did last year because we lost in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, so that kind of maybe lowered our confidence, and we just been on a little hot streak coming off that Big 12 run, and guys getting a lot of confidence, been playing a lot more minutes. So from a team standpoint, I think we might got more confidence than we did last year, and we're just going to try to keep it rolling.
Front row question on the right-hand side.
Matt Galloway, Topeka Capital Journal for Devontae and Svi. Do the Elite Eight games feel any different than the other tournament games? Do they come with a little bit more nervousness, maybe more of a chance to play a little bit less loose?
Svi first, please.
I would say just more important because we know we one game away of Final Four, so we just got to do our best and come prepared for the games because we know we're just one step closer.
Yeah, what he says is just more important, and I think you feel a little bit more anxious and excited about this game because you just need one more win to get to where you always dreamed to be of as a kid playing in the Final Four. So just anxious and excitement.
Down to the left, thank you.
Chris Lazzarino, Kansas alumni. Devontae, the game's already as big as it gets for both teams with the anxiousness and excitement. Does having a Kansas-Duke matchup add any juice to this game?
Oh, definitely. It's two blue bloods, two great historic programs, and two Hall of Fame coaches, and it's a pride thing, and you want to do it, and the fans that have something to brag about, and of course getting to the Final Four is on all of our minds. So it's definitely Duke Kansas is a huge matchup.
Kate Carlton, South Boston News Record for Coach. You have a senior guard matchup tomorrow night, Devontae Graham and Grayson Allen. To single out your guy, Devontae, what type of legacy will he leave on your program regardless of tomorrow's outcome?
Well, I think that his legacy is cemented right now. And he'll go down as one of the, all-time greats. He'll have his jersey retired. He's an All-American. He's a Player of the Year in our league. But more importantly than that, I think he's the best intangible guy we've ever had here, and has as good a leadership qualities as anybody I've ever coached. So he's been the complete package as a player, and basically, he's a guy that I don't think coaches get an opportunity to coach, but every few years, and certainly we've been blessed to have him.
Bill, how difficult the matchup is this going to be, especially guarding Bagley? I mean, you don't match up in a way that you have somebody that can probably go on Bagley. I'm not asking for your game plan.
Have you
here,
not
but
seen how big Svi is over there?
Svi is huge. He's gotten huge. Put on a lot of weight.
So you know what? It's a hard matchup. They've got great players, and they, you know, who knows? They may have 5 first-round draft picks. I mean, could have the number 1 pick. You know, definitely a couple of lottery picks. But you know, we got good players too. And the thing about it is, sometimes I think when you play somebody like that, if you play like them, and you know you can't match up physically, the scales definitely tip to them. We don't play like them. We play different. So you know, if we play our game and you know, everybody's talking about how do we match up with them. Well, hopefully we can be in a game that it forces them to kind of, you know, play a little differently to match up with us. So and that's hard to do when you play zone a lot of the time. But it'll be a tough game, like Svi said. But it's going to be a fun game, and certainly you know, we know it's going to be tough. We know we got our hands full, but we'd like to think they have their hands full too.
Yeah, Coach, after your win last night, you talked about, and I think this was before Duke and Syracuse had finished up their game, but you talked about how your guys should be playing free. And I was just hoping that maybe you could expound upon that. Why, you know, why in this game in particular is it important for your team to play free?
Well, I think whenever you're a perimeter shooting team and you generate most of your offense from the perimeter, you know, you know, the freer you play, the better you're probably going to shoot the basketball. But you know, you know, we're playing arguably the most talented team in the country, and we've got really good players, and players come to Kansas and they go to Duke to play in games just like this, and I really believe that this is going to be a game in which there's the pressure to go to the Elite Eight, but there's something about it that is Duke, Kansas on the biggest stage. That'll allow guys just to go play for that one thing and not so much thinking about what's next, which I think a lot of times that's what teams do in the Elite Eight game.
I'm going to take this opportunity to ask if there's any questions left for the student athletes, and if not, we're going to dismiss them to go to their breakout sessions. We'll stay with Coach Self for a while longer, as long as there are questions. And there are not. So, gentlemen, you may be dismissed. To your right, we'll stay with the head coach for a little while longer. You already have hands up. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and good luck tomorrow. First question for Bill is right here.
Bill, Mike LaPresti, NCAA.com. When you go through months like Kansas does, when all you're hearing is the streak, and you have to deal with that and overcome it, does that prepare you in any way, prepare the kids anyway for March?
You know what? That's a great question, and I would say it probably does more than it doesn't. I don't know if it's a huge deal, but you know, our kids operated under duress this year, and most years because of the streak. And it's not so much the pressure we put on ourselves; it's what the outside people always want to talk about, and they hear it, and they don't want to be the team that doesn't do it. So I think as far as operating in games that are of high magnitude, certainly, you know, hopefully would help you prepare for a game like this that we'll have tomorrow.
Coach, this year and last year you've made the 4-guard rotation work. Coach K has gone to zone defense, which we wouldn't have expected. Has there been a change over in recent years of top coaches, maybe willingness to adapt their philosophies to what's in front of them that maybe hasn't existed before?
I guess you could say so to an extent, but also I think personnel and youth dictate a lot of it. I can't speak for any other program, but I would think that, you know, Duke's always been historically one of the best, you know, defensive teams in the country year in and year out. And when we're playing a ton of freshmen, sometimes that's a more difficult thing to do. But the zone with them is so effective because of their size and length. I mean, and we see that with Syracuse all the time. So strategically, I think it's a good move. and with us, we didn't do it because we chose to. We did it because of personnel, and you know, it's you know, last year we, you know, when you talk about your 4-man being a guard, but you know, the guard is Josh Jackson, and he's a lottery pick, is a little bit different than playing with legitimate 4 guards. So we're playing a lot smaller than what we have in years past. That's been the biggest challenge for us.
A lot of Elite Eights for you, and you have stressed that you want the players to play with a free mind. This has been a continuing theme for them, too. Along the way, was there any adjustment you had to make yourself to maybe not be uptight or show the team that you were uptight? Did you have to do anything tangible, or did you try to do anything tangible to be more relaxed in front of your team?
During the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean,
No.
it's regarding the Elite Eight.
No. Well, I mean, we haven't played it yet, but
through the years.
Yeah,
through the years.
I've you know, when we went to our first Elite Eight at Tulsa, I mean, you're playing with house money, and then you know, the other ones we've been a pretty high seed, but I've always thought you know, this time of year is supposed to be fun, and I guess people can equate to a poor record in the Elite Eight as maybe teams uptight or whatnot. I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I think, you know, we don't do things any different. I'm more relaxed now than I am in December and January. I guarantee it. But I do think that is important. You know, players need to feel free and they need to be relaxed and have fun, as opposed to sometimes you want something so bad it creates pressure. And I do think that's been the case a lot of times with us. You want something so bad that sometimes maybe you don't give yourself the best chance, but I don't think that'll be the case this year. This year's different. This year is, I mean, even though we were 1 seed, every time you talk to somebody, it's always what's wrong with them. Nobody ever says what's good with us. Everybody says what's wrong with them. They're too small. They don't defensively rebound. They can't defend their home court. They're this or that, and you know, the guys still end up pulling it together and you know, with very little depth. And so I think this team is really proud of their accomplishment, and I think they feel like that you know, we put ourselves in a position where we don't have to feel that pressure.
Next 3 questions come from the 3rd row, and then Karen, there's one in back you in the back. Go.
Bill, you've talked a lot about Devontae's growth and speed too, but is there anybody you've had at Kansas that sticks out that improved the most from the time he got into the program to the time he got out?
I think you could say Frank. You know, Frank and Devontae probably as much as anybody. You know, Thomas Robinson played 8 minutes a game as a freshman until he's a runner-up for National Player of the Year 2 years later. Cole Aldridge, who we didn't know if he could ever get in the game. Jeff Withey, you know, we've had a lot of guys that have come a long way. You know, we've really recruited well, really well, but if you look at the best players for our teams over time, have been guys that have been in the program 2 or 3 years that may not have been McDonald's All-Americans, may have been, you know, top 70 or top 100 guys and end up being lottery picks. So we've had a lot of guys get a lot better, but certainly Devontae and Frank probably as much as anybody.
Have you noticed any difference in the way teams are guarding Svi at the three-point line in the tournament the last 3 games?
Not really. You know, they're trying to shade him and not give him as many looks. And I haven't studied it, but how many threes has he got off in the tournament so far? 15 or so, which is not a great number. I mean, that should be a 2-game total as opposed to a 3-game total. But you know, he's I think teams have done a pretty good job the second half of Big 12 play of shading him and trying to take him out a little bit more.
Mitchell Gladstone, Duke Chronicle. Coach, in terms of, you know, everyone, coach, talk about different 2-3 zones, different zone defenses in general. What makes this Duke zone particularly hard to play against, especially on a short turnaround like you guys have to deal with?
Well, you know, even though, you know, we played Syracuse early in the season and we didn't do a good job of attacking it at all. We just made some hard shots. But you know, I think the biggest thing is, and you know, Baylor has done this with us with their zone, even though it's a different zone. But it's hard to simulate length. You know, you can't simulate the length that some of the teams can play with, and primarily the way Duke can play with theirs, and they also have, even though they want their bigs to stay in the game, but they got multiple bigs they can put in and do some things, and I think that's the thing that makes it the hardest is their activity out front and then their length behind it.
Yeah, hi, Bill. What do you remember about the first time you saw Bagley out on the recruiting trail?
Well, I remembered what everybody remembered is that he's different. He's different. The thing that impressed me most about, and we tried to recruit Marvin, obviously, some, but the thing that impressed me most about him is to be more talented than everybody, but also play harder than everybody. I mean, he's got a great motor, and that motor was an AAU ball. I mean, the motor was in high school. I've always thought that he played as hard as anybody, anytime that I've ever watched him play, and then when you're more talented and do that, then obviously that's going to mean great things.
Bill, can you talk more specifically about the other guys outside of Bagley and what's going to make them a difficult guard tomorrow?
Well, you got two prolific three-point shooters in Trent and Allen, and you got a point guard that we tried hard to recruit that's probably as gifted with the ball as anybody, anybody is, and can make plays for others, and then if you got the best three big men in the country, if you include Ayton, two of them play for Duke and with Carter, so. They're good, they're deep, and certainly well-rounded. But it's not one of those games, I don't think, that you can, Marvin's terrific, but, any of those other guys are capable of getting 25 or 30 any night too. So we got to defend as a group. But certainly the biggest thing is, you got to defend the three, but you got to keep them off the glass. And that's kind of a tough assignment sometimes when you get spread out.
Down here on the right, Bill.
If Ante and Svi are thinking about the last 2 years tomorrow, would you take that as a bad sign, or would you think it might be a good thing to kind of be able to light a fire under them?
Well, I don't think I don't agree with if they're thinking about it lights a fire. How can, they're seniors. How could you want it more than what, just because of what something happened last year? They're going to want it the same. I don't think it lights a fire. I think sometimes they can be learning experiences, which maybe make you more prepared. Because we lost to the national champion Villanova in a one-possession game 2 years ago, and last year we didn't play very well, and Oregon ended up beating us double figures, I think. But certainly, they got to play with there's no what ifs. Just let it go. Let it go and have if you play to try to protect something tomorrow, we'll go home sad. We got to go try to take it, and I think those guys understand that.
Anything else for the head coach for Kansas? Okay, we're out of here early.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Best of luck, Bill. Thank you.